More pressure on Venezuela from the United States. The State Department says it will designate Venezuelan drug cartel De Los Soles as a foreign terror organization. Now, despite denying the claim, the U.S. alleges Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is a leader of that cartel. And then look at this, the USS Gerald R aircraft carrier. It is now within striking distance off the waters of Venezuela. So over the weekend, the U.S. blew up another suspected drug boat, 3 reported dead in the water in that case. So it's a big question today. Is this escalation going to escalate even further? Let's go live to former National Intelligence Officer Fulton Armstrong on CBS News 24/7. Good to have you with us, Fulton. So the Trump administration says this is the war on drugs playing out. But does such a war, especially with this much firepower there in the water, does it justify that aircraft carrier sitting there this hour?
You don't need an aircraft carrier to catch a couple of speedy boats, fast boats, which are rowboats with supercharged engines, to intercept them on the high seas or even to explode them. And so the purpose of this policy is really a political effort to make it look like they're doing the so-called war on drugs. But the primary purpose is to put pressure on Venezuela to effect a regime change, a regime change that many in this administration have been trying to do during Trump 1 and Trump 2. And that's why the designation of the terrorism thing is so important, because then it gives them a pretext. It gives them a legal cover and a political cover for going ahead and trying to effect this regime change in Venezuela.
So if our military does, in fact, go deeper, and by all indications, at least the capability is there, help us to know what they're facing by way of Venezuela's military.
The Venezuelan military is not remotely world class. This would not be a conventional military confrontation for us or for them. We probably would do something using extremely high technology, whether it would be missiles or drones, maybe even a little bit of shock and awe, and they would pull back because they would be destroyed in any confrontation with us along those terms. But they do have control of the country. It's their country, and these sorts of battles ultimately are political battles. And the Venezuelans know history. They know that in other political battles where there was asymmetric resistance to a U.S. Military operation, and I think boots on the ground is not the likely scenario. We're going to use technology, standoff, and do these things. But if we did have to put boots on the ground, they know that we don't do too well in political wars. We don't do well in asymmetric things. And they also look at the governments that we put up in these situations, like in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Those governments, because of their close relationship with us, lack a certain amount of legitimacy. They often divide their opposition, and they're not ready to govern. And so I think that the Venezuelans wouldn't face us in a military way. They would face us in a political way.
Well, President Trump told CBS News 60 Minutes that Maduro's days as president there are numbered. Are we looking at a Trump regime change action? And if so, who would replace Maduro?
I think that we are looking at an effort to effect regime change. Their preferred scenario was to be out there in the Caribbean, huffing and puffing and shooting these fast boats out of the ground to try to signal to potentially unhappy members of the Venezuelan armed forces that now's the time to rise up. And believe me, the country has been suffering. Our sanctions have destroyed the economy. And some people would even say, even if they are loyal to the Chavez-Maduro revolution, they would say, look, we have to eat, we have to get on with life. Sorry, President Maduro, you got to go. But all that pressure hasn't worked. All that huffing and puffing hasn't worked. So probably we'll see now some calibrated escalation of pressures. Maybe they'll shoot at an island, a Venezuelan island called Orchila off the coast, or maybe something on the coast, saying that now that they basically will be able to say whatever the intelligence they claim they have is now the grounds for them to do something, blow them up, and see if that's the signal to get the uprising started. This is a long-standing problem that we have in Latin America, that we don't really understand how the countries work. And then if that doesn't work, maybe they would do drones or missiles against some government ministry in Caracas, in the capital of the country, saying also that, well, they're complicit in this narco-terrorism, although the evidence is really not there. Cartel de los Soles doesn't really exist. and to say that Venezuela, which doesn't produce drugs, doesn't consume drugs, but yes, some passes through their country, that they are the narco terrorists is a little bit on the exaggerated side and undercuts the purposes. So I think that you have basically an effort to decapitate the government is the maximum military thing. Now, what would happen? We have a preferred candidate. She's also the Nobel Peace Prize Committee's preferred candidate. Her name is Maria Corina Machado.
Right.
She's an attractive candidate, but she's divided the opposition. She doesn't have a whole lot of leadership experience. And we're talking about a monumental task of bringing a deeply polarized country together with the U.S. government blueprint.
All right. Fulton Armstrong helping us to sort of frame the week and the week ahead as we see that aircraft carrier off of the waters of Venezuela. Thank you so much.